On September the 17th, 2024, thousands of booby-trapped handheld pager devices detonated across the nation of Lebanon. Since the moment the blasts began, the sovereign nation of Israel and the Lebanon-based non-state militant organization Hezbollah have been on the warpath. Israel has launched a massive shock and awe offensive. Much of Hezbollah's leadership is now dead, and within weeks or even days, Israeli troops and tank columns may be rolling across the territory of its northern neighbor. The last several weeks have seen the start of a war that the world spent almost a year trying to avert, and now the cascade has begun in a way that could just be impossible to stop. So in today's special episode, we're going to be presenting the second and final installment, at least for now, of a series exploring the explosion of violence between Israel and Hezbollah. In this episode, we're going to be picking up where we left from part one, in the wake of not only the wave of pager explosions, but a far more devastating wave of Israeli airstrikes that rained down all across Lebanon. We'll explore what happened on both sides as Israel and Hezbollah pivoted toward war. We'll dive deep on a targeted assassination that tore at the very fabric of the entire Middle East. Finally, we'll cast our gaze ahead at both the sheer scale and scope of the violence to come and any lingering source of hope that such bloodshed can still be averted. This is Shock and Awe in Lebanon, Part 2. Okay, before we begin today's episode, we've got to do a little bit of housekeeping here. All of the information that we present in today's episode is up to date as of the morning of September the 30th, Israel and Lebanon time. Any major developments after that time will not be accounted for in this episode, although you can rest assured that if major developments do emerge, as they almost certainly will, we'll probably be covering them soon enough. With that note out of the way, let us begin. As the dust settled all across Lebanon in the wake of a crippling wave of Israeli airstrikes, the situation on the morning of September the 24th, 2024 was a far cry from what it had been just a week earlier. That is to say, the situation was a far cry from what it had been before the pagers blew up. For months, experts around the world had been warning about just how big and just how bad an Israel-Hezbollah war could become. Between its 150,000 rockets, its tens of thousands of foot soldiers, its elite Radwan troops, its potential to swell its ranks further with foreign fighters, and its direct support from Iran, Hezbollah appeared then as if it would be a far harder beast for Israel to battle than Hamas in Gaza ever was. Today, that is still true. A war between Hezbollah and Israel would be a far more ruinous affair for Israel, even if it ended with the near-complete devastation of Hezbollah that has now been achieved against Hamas. But the Hezbollah organization that existed after Israel's full-scale assault is, at least for a short time, a toothless paper tiger compared to the thing it was just a few months ago. It's not clear how many of Hezbollah's rockets have been destroyed, but the number is quite likely a small fraction of its total stockpile. Far more important is the loss of potentially thousands of rocket-launched tubes, and Israel's demonstrated, repeated ability to both see Hezbollah's rocket launchers coming and preemptively destroy the weapons that are ready to fire. Its elite Radwan forces have seen a near-complete decapitation of their upper levels of leadership and likely hundreds of cumulative casualties between the pager and handheld radio attacks, the massive strikes of September the 23rd, and everything in between. The civil side of Hezbollah has taken its own dramatic losses, and while much of the infrastructure the group prepared in southern Lebanon to stand against an Israeli invasion is probably still intact, a fair and growing proportion of that infrastructure has now been devastated. Hezbollah cannot trust its communications equipment. The people living under its authority know full well that they aren't protected, and even the Lebanese capital city of Beirut knows it's in the crosshairs. What Israel has accomplished, in a strategic sense, still fell a step short of forcing surrender or withdrawal of Hezbollah, but it had performed a critical 1-2 punch that would soften Hezbollah's underbelly in advance of what was still to come. The commanders and fighters who previously believed that they could launch surprise attacks and ground incursions into Israel now are either dead or have every reason to believe that they can't. And those who believed that they could lure the IDF into a long, bloody counterinsurgent operation on Hezbollah's terms now know that Israel has been able to see and infiltrate far more than Israel's leaders initially let on. Israeli officials have repeated their expectation that by hitting Hezbollah long and hard enough, they will force a retreat from southern Lebanon, achieving the fundamental objective of allowing Israelis to return to their homes in the country's north. Around the world, Fears are quickly escalating that Lebanon could turn into another Gaza with another protracted IDF operation, more disproportionate and indiscriminate use of force against civilians, and another long, asymmetric insurgency that will go on far longer than Israel might expect. And the violence continued from there. On Tuesday, the 24th, Israeli warplanes bombed missile launches, weapons caches, and other targets in Lebanon, while Hezbollah launched several attacks on an explosives factory and an airfield, both in northern Israel. Also on the 24th, Israel claimed to have killed a senior Hezbollah commander named Ibrahim Kabasi, the head of the organization's missile systems, where he was located in a suburb of Beirut. Other high officials within Hezbollah's rocket and missile division were also killed, as Hezbollah would later confirm. That day, Prime Minister Netanyahu appealed to the people of Lebanon to, quote, rid yourself of Nasrallah's grip for your own good, while warning that, quote, anyone who has a missile in their living room and a rocket in their garage will not have a home. Wednesday the 25th was no more peaceful, with Hezbollah launching waves of rockets into Israel and sending a missile aimed at the headquarters of Mossad in Tel Aviv. That attempted strike raised Israel's ire even further, as a new report by Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari of the IDF disclosed that by Israel's count, it had hit 2,000 Hezbollah targets over the span of just the prior 3 days. Hagari explained that Hezbollah's intelligence networks were now in the crosshairs, with both its missile and rocket division and its ground fighting force having had their leadership dispatched already. 51 people would die across Lebanon due to Israeli airstrikes on Wednesday, per the Lebanese health minister, along with 223 wounded, as reported the following morning. In Israel, the tone was perhaps not celebratory, but appeared to reinforce the idea that Israel's offensive is working. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant explained while speaking to IDF troops that Hezbollah, quote, has suffered a sequence of blows to its command and control, its fighters, and the means to fight. Meanwhile, on the ground in Lebanon, hospitals reported being increasingly unable to keep up with the flow of wounded, while an Israeli hospital in the city of Haifa has moved all of its operations underground. On Wednesday, in New York City, after an address made by US President Joe Biden to the UN General Assembly, Lebanon's foreign minister added to the chorus of voices insisting that the United States force Israel to back down, insisting that the US, quote, is the key to our salvation. For America's part, its highest officials insisted that it was doing the best it can via diplomatic means to deter Israel from broadening its northern offensive even further, but new measures like a US-introduced Security Council resolution or a pause in American arms shipment to Israel still remained elusive. Efforts to establish a ceasefire in Gaza moved no closer to resolution than they had been before. And on Wednesday, IDF Chief of Staff and Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi confirmed what the next step for Israel would almost certainly be. Speaking to soldiers along Israel's northern border, Halevi offered, quote, you hear the jets overhead. We have been striking all day. This is both to prepare the ground for your possible entry and to continue degrading Hezbollah. Halevi explained that the IDF is in the process of drawing up plans for a ground assault, entering, quote, villages that Hezbollah has prepared as large military outposts. He continued, your entry into those areas with force, your encounter with Hezbollah operatives will show them what it means to face a professional, highly skilled and battle-experienced force. You go in, destroy the enemy there, and decisively destroy their infrastructure. Hours prior, Israel had announced that 2 additional brigades of troops would shift northward to the Lebanese border, suggesting that they may take part in any operations to come. Over the following several days, IDF troops south of the Lebanese border would conduct exercises simulating a ground invasion. At the time of writing, no ground invasion has yet begun. Some of the most pivotal moments in modern conflicts have come as a result of careful timing. The United States made its disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan at the time it did, with the intent of implementing a symbolic end date of its Afghanistan operations before the 20-year anniversary of September the 11th, 2001. Russia invaded the nation of Georgia during the 2008 Olympics, it invaded Crimea during the 2014 Winter Olympics, and it invaded all of Ukraine just 4 days after the 2022 Winter Olympics concluded. And although the leaders of Israel have made no public statements to confirm or deny any larger intent behind their timing, Israel's operations in Lebanon picked up their withering pace at a very important moment during the 79th session of the General Assembly of the United Nations held at UN headquarters in New York City. Apart from its relevance as a major gathering of world nations, the General Assembly brought with it another important attribute: its location in the largest city of a nation that's long been Israel's most important foreign supporter. And on September the 25th, that nation, the United States, would lead a 12-member bloc in calling urgently for a temporary ceasefire. Besides the US, that bloc included the UK, Saudi Arabia, Japan, Qatar, the entire European Union, and several other nations. The ceasefire they demanded wouldn't have lasted long, just 3 weeks, but it would have provided a critical window for Israel, Hezbollah, the internationally recognized government of Lebanon, and foreign mediators to establish a lasting truce. In their joint statement, the bloc referred to the escalating hostilities as intolerable and expressed that they presented a, quote, unacceptable risk of a broader regional escalation. The statement came on the same day that Lieutenant General Halevi had foreshadowed an IDF ground assault into Lebanon. That same day, the UN Secretary General had urged a ceasefire, and Lebanon's Prime Minister had accused Israel of violating Lebanese sovereignty. But although the joint statement was meant to sway Israel with the weight of the international community, Israeli officials showed immediately that they had zero interest in backing down. The morning after the nations of the world pled their case, Netanyahu rejected the proposal outright, with a statement reading in part, quote, the purported directive to ease up on the fighting in the north is the opposite of the truth. The Prime Minister has directed the IDF to continue fighting with full force according to the plan that was presented to him. Foreign Minister Katz added to the growing Israeli chorus against the proposal, quote, there will be no ceasefire in the north. We will continue to fight against the terrorist organization Hezbollah with all our might until victory and the safe return of the residents of the north to their homes. Hezbollah didn't immediately offer comment on the plan, either in favor or against. Nevertheless, taking full advantage of Israel's envoy's presence at the UN, American and French officials continued to work toward a dialogue in hopes of ending the violence. But in global affairs, actions speak louder than words, and if the US and its partners had any doubt of Israel's seriousness, then that doubt was addressed decisively the following day. On September the 27th, Israeli F-15 and F-16 jet fighters dropped a suspected 80 or more bombs, including at least 15 US-made 2,000-pound bombs, according to some sources, on the suburban neighborhood of Daeh, outside Beirut. Referred to as Operation New Order, the airstrike was not aimed at the entire city block that it leveled, but at what lay underneath: Hezbollah's central headquarters, a supposedly secret location hidden under the neighborhood with the clear intent of using civilians as a smokescreen and a human shield. The airstrike, approved moments before Benjamin Netanyahu left his New York hotel to address the UN General Assembly, targeted a bunker purportedly located some 60 feet or 18 meters underground, where Hezbollah's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, was conducting a meeting. In the bunker, Nasrallah was alongside Hezbollah's Southern Front commander, Ali Karaki, Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Deputy Commander, Abbas Niforoshan, and several senior leaders with the Hezbollah organization. The strike came with such force that, according to sources on the ground, tremors could be felt some 30 kilometers away, about 18.5 miles, and a massive crater was left in the aftermath. Needless to say, Israel got him. The following day, Hassan Nasrallah would be confirmed dead by both Israel and Hezbollah, along with the Iranian commander and many of the Hezbollah leaders who had been alongside Nasrallah at the time of the strike. At the time of writing, the death toll from the strike is frozen at 33, with 195 injuries, but the majority of the rubble has yet to be searched, and many people are believed to lie dead underneath. The proportion of the dead that were Hezbollah members, as opposed to the proportion that were civilians in the residential buildings above, is as yet unknown. One man who's believed to have survived the attack, Hashem Safadin, has reportedly been made the new leader of Hezbollah in the aftermath. Safadin was head of Hezbollah's Jihad Council and its Executive Council, and shares strong ties with Iran, even having seen his son marry the daughter of now-deceased Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. The death of Hassan Nasrallah was a pivotal moment in Israel's conflict with Hezbollah for multiple reasons. For one thing, it was the clearest indicator yet of Israel's deep intelligence penetration of Hezbollah's operations. For weeks now, Israel has proved that it knows where Hezbollah's leaders are, where they travel, and how to get them. But Nasrallah, who lived much of the last decade in hiding, was supposed to be the hardest of all to find. His death, plus Israel's successful targeting of Hezbollah's central headquarters, speaks volumes about Israel's ability to carry out future strikes. Beyond Israel's intelligence reach, Nasrallah's death was a major escalation of Israel's conflict with Hezbollah, indicating that whatever Israel's public statements may have indicated, the country's war goals extend further than simply establishing a safe return zone for the people of northern Israel. Such a return would have been possible without killing a person so highly esteemed within Hezbollah as Nasrallah, and Israel could have used tactics meant to declaw Hezbollah rather than decapitate it. Instead, the IDF chose decapitation. Finally, the presence of such a senior Iranian leader in Nasrallah's bunker was an indicator of just how deeply enmeshed Hezbollah and Iran really are. At the same time, his death will be yet another high-profile assassination that Iran will feel compelled to answer. As for Israel's own framing of the assassination, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was clear, claiming that Israel had, quote, settled the score against a, quote, master murderer, and that Nasrallah was, quote, the central engine of Iran's axis of evil. Internationally, the response to Nasrallah's killing from the same world leaders who had just been calling for an immediate ceasefire was more muted than one might expect. American President Joe Biden explained Israel's rationale for the strike, referring to it as, quote, measure of justice for his many victims, and describing it as a response to Nasrallah's decision to open hostilities with Israel one day after the Hamas attacks of October the 7th. Biden also reiterated calls for a ceasefire. The UK's Foreign Secretary David Lammy also pushed for a ceasefire after speaking with Lebanon's Prime Minister at the UN. The Foreign Affairs Chief of the European Union, Joseph Borrell, offered a more concerned point of view, quoting here, nobody seems to be able to stop Netanyahu, neither in Gaza nor in the West Bank. Saudi Arabia voiced its support of Lebanon after the strike, although not making mention of Nasrallah's death, while Russia condemned Nasrallah's killing outright and called on Israel to cease hostilities against Lebanon. In Iran, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei was moved to a secure location for his own safety, but vowed in public statements that Nasrallah, quote, will not go unavenged. Iraq's Prime Minister, the leader friendly to Iran, insisted that Israel's strike had crossed, quote, all red lines. And Hezbollah, unsurprisingly, vowed to, quote, continue its jihad in confronting the enemy rather than backing down. Since Nasrallah's demise, Israel has only continued to rack up victories over Hezbollah. Also killed in the days just before and after his death was one Mohammed Sarur, formerly the head of Hezbollah's drone unit. Also, Hassan Yassin, a high-ranking figure inside Hezbollah intelligence, Mohammed Ali Ismail, leader of Hezbollah's missile unit in southern Lebanon, alongside his deputy, Kabil Nauk, leader of Hezbollah's Preventative Security Council, and more. The total number of senior Hezbollah commanders now dead is well over 30, and according to senior US officials, Hezbollah's surviving leaders are increasingly panicked at the prospect of spies within their ranks. Elsewhere, Israel has carried out hundreds upon hundreds more strikes across Lebanon, destroying paramilitary infrastructure, blowing up weapons depots, and killing militants, albeit at a civilian cost that is still being tallied. And in yet another show of force, Israel hacked the Beirut airport's control tower to instruct an Iranian passenger plane not to land in the country, which it ultimately did not. At the United Nations, during a speech given while warplanes were in the air towards Nasrallah's position, Netanyahu vowed to keep pressure not just on Hamas and Hezbollah, but on Iran. Quoting him here, I have a message for the tyrants of Tehran. If you strike us, we will strike you. There is no place in Iran that the long arm of Israel cannot reach. During the speech, numerous foreign delegations would boo and walk out. But Netanyahu didn't just appear undeterred. Instead, it seems that was the whole point. Netanyahu would not spend a single word on the prospect of a ceasefire, let alone a peace, but instead argued Israel's right to eliminate those it considers its mortal enemies. Netanyahu even went so far as to refer to the UN as a, quote, swamp of anti-Semitic bile. Since Nasrallah's death, international attention has shifted to include yet another flashpoint between Israel and an Iran-backed non-state militant organization. This time, the organization in question are Yemen's Houthi rebels. Now, we won't deliver an in-depth explanation of the Houthis in this particular episode, but suffice it to say that they control much of Yemen, are firmly supported by Iran, and have spent nearly a year launching both frequent unsuccessful attacks against Israel and frequent, occasionally more successful attacks against global shipping vessels in the Red Sea. On September the 28th, the Houthis fired a ballistic missile at Israel's Ben Gurion International Airport and stated outright that their intent was to strike the airport at the same time as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu would be returning from the UN and landing in his country. The missile was intercepted, but not before making it well into Israeli airspace. A day later, on the 29th, Israel acknowledged via a statement that it had used dozens of military aircraft to attack power plants across Yemen, the port city of Hodeida, and the smaller port of Ras Issa in direct retribution. 4 were reported dead by the Houthi-run health ministry in the area, along with 29 wounded. The Houthis vowed to continue their attempted strikes against Israel in support of Gaza and Lebanon, despite Israel's retaliation. Now, at the time of writing, Hassan Nasrallah and several dozen top Hezbollah commanders are dead. Lebanese authorities have logged over 1,000 fatalities since the start of Israel's wider offensive. According to Lebanon's prime minister, up to 1 million people may already be displaced within the country, nearly a fifth of the national population. The Houthis have chosen to directly involve themselves, while Iran must answer for the killing of not just a valued ally, but one of its own highest generals. Foreign governments and international bodies have shown themselves to be impotent to rein Israel in, and the few governments that have direct leverage over Israel have not seen fit to use it. Prime Minister Netanyahu, his political allies, and his military have shown no interest in a ceasefire, and they appear to have at their disposal not just heavy munitions, but a deep and intimate knowledge of Hezbollah's current status. When provided opportunities to de-escalate, Israel has chosen not just to decline, but to offer a rhetorical spit in the face of those who would see Israel draw its operations down. For our part, this episode is up to date as the morning as Israel and Lebanon tie-in on September the 30th, 2024. By the time you're watching this, the situation may have gotten even worse. So what we can do now is take stock of what the current situation indicates about what the next few days and weeks might bring. When it comes to the question of leadership, Hezbollah has been thoroughly decapitated, with most of its once senior commanders now killed and all their strategic, tactical, and institutional insight gone with them. But, like any good Hydra, Hezbollah is very good at regrowing its heads, something that even Hassan Nasrallah made no secret about before his death. Hezbollah's new leader has reportedly already been anointed, and after surviving the strikes that killed his predecessor, he's likely to be lying low. Positions that have been, shall we say, vacated by force are supposedly now filled again, with deputies and underlings who've been elevated to top jobs. On the one hand, this means that Hezbollah will be able to continue its fight, albeit with a reduced or altered capacity. On the other, it does not mean that Hezbollah's new leaders will simply act as their predecessors did. Perhaps such a sweeping change in leadership will elevate voices who are willing to make serious concessions to Israel and stop the bleeding. Or perhaps they're more violent, perhaps they're more extreme. Perhaps they were only held in check by the better instincts of higher-ups who are now dead. Perhaps Hezbollah's new leaders, over the coming months and years, will follow the same path as a wide range of new leaders rising to the heads of terror organizations and turn toward greater and greater extremism as time goes on. Those who once swore allegiance to Al-Qaeda would one day lead the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. To say that a similar phenomenon could not happen here would be pretty premature. Nor does the loss of Hezbollah's prior leadership mean that the organization has lost its ability to fight. Hezbollah is an organization built on its contingency plans, and among those contingencies are provisions for its frontline soldiers to continue the fight even if its leadership is incapacitated. Hezbollah's foot soldiers, especially their elite Radwan force, are organized into small self-sufficient units that are meant to operate autonomously if need be. They have access to a vast tunnel network in southern Lebanon, one that far eclipses the tunnels of Hamas in Gaza. In those tunnels are a wide range of munitions, and while Israel has been able to destroy some of what Hezbollah restored in the south, there is no telling what the group might have hidden. Even if Israeli intelligence can penetrate Hezbollah's highest levels, its ability to see inside the group's underground warren is entirely another matter. Meanwhile, Israel has continued to openly advertise its commitment to a ground invasion. At the time of writing, several IDF brigades are thought to be prepped and ready to breach foreign territory. Actually, that's already happened. I've read it, but it's not in the script. And additional reservists have been sent northward to help. Israel's military exercises just south of the border clearly indicate that their intent is to storm Hezbollah strongholds. While it doesn't appear likely that the IDF will march on Beirut, even the more constrained mission of a limited invasion in southern Lebanon will come with grave risk. IDF soldiers entering southern Lebanon will be in territory that Hezbollah has prepared for years in advance of such an operation. Their militants have planned meticulously for a defense of the region, and even after such withering airstrikes by Israel, Hezbollah will still bring ground forces that can wage a far more complete asymmetric war than Hamas in Gaza ever could. Finally, despite Israel's clear shock and awe intent in everything from the pager attack to its first wave of airstrikes to Nasrallah's death, the worst-case scenario still seems to be drawing closer. That worst-case scenario is a war that goes beyond Gaza, beyond just southern Lebanon, and draws in the entire Middle East. In the aftermath of Nasrallah's death, Iran's supreme leader and its president have sent clear signals to other members of Iran's so-called axis of resistance, endorsing actions that would assist Hezbollah in its time of need. The Houthis have already shown their willingness to respond, and networks of militias in Iraq and Syria have spent months proving that Israel is within range of their rockets. Iraq has spent years getting closer and closer with Iran and held nothing back in condemning the killing of Nasrallah. Syria, another close Iran ally, has shown its support to Hezbollah, and both nations declared several days of national mourning. Iran, already vowing retribution after Israel assassinated Hamas's political leader in Iran's capital city, now has to answer for the deaths of not just a key member of its axis of resistance, but a high general of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The Middle East has been walking a tightrope for nearly a year, trying to avoid pitching over into an all-out war between Israel and its Western allies on one side and Iran and all of its proxies and allies on the other. But that balancing act has been shaky for months, and if anything was capable of putting both sides on the path to all-out war, the events of the last several weeks are it. And as we conclude today's episode, we must acknowledge that by the time this episode is released, that wider war may have already begun, or Israeli troops may be marching through southern Lebanon. Indeed, if such a thing does happen, then rest assured we'll be covering it shortly. If it doesn't, well, we'll be covering both why not and what will come next. For now, with another solemn acknowledgement of the people caught in the middle of this bitter and metastasizing conflict, we're signing off, but we'll pay close attention to what happens next, and we strongly recommend that you do too. Thanks for watching.